Hear me? Hi guys, welcome to Coastal Conservative News. We are live tonight from Apopka, Florida for the Florida Citizens Alliance AI and Data Center Policy Family and Faith Symposium. So we're going to have live coverage for the entire panel. Tonight we're going to be hearing from Alex Newman, a journalist, educator, author, and consultant, Mary Flynn O'Neill, Tom Gatens, Alex Dre, and Carolina Amnesty. So we're going to be hearing from them on a panel about AI, about data centers. We've been going throughout communities in Florida, hearing people's opinions on data centers, and it's become a very large topic. So that's what the forum is going to be about tonight. And we're going to try to get as many interviews as well, especially after the coverage with some of the panelists for you guys. So don't go anywhere after, but stay tuned for the live coverage during the event. We're out here right now. I'll be right back with more live coverage and interviews coming soon. All right, guys, we are back with our live coverage here with Tom. He is an attendee of the event. What are you looking forward to hearing tonight, and what brings you out here?
I just want to learn more about AI and especially about the data centers. I've read a lot of stories about how, communities have invited these data centers in thinking it's going to be like, life changing and changing for the community. And in fact, it is, but not in the way they thought it was. So definitely want to be on guard. I'm very glad that in in our state we have a state government that is like well aware of these things. But I want to know for me, so that I can inform, my local city council. And I'm hoping some of the city council is going to be here tonight.
Well, yeah, that brings me up a question I wanted to ask you. Where you live, have you heard conversations like this going on? Are citizens concerned? Is there anyone talking about this yet?
I mean, you can see conversations happening on Facebook.
Yeah.
Although, Facebook is not usually the best place to get good information from, but there's conversations going on. I really haven't seen a whole lot of conversations like in the newspaper or, in the local, government meetings that we've had. I haven't really seen that come up, but definitely people in the community are concerned about it.
Well, what is the biggest concern you have personally about these? Is there something specific that you're just thinking about and kind of want to make sure we're on top of the issue before it gets an AI data center gets built where you live? Is there an issue that you're concerned about?
Well, I mean, I think just like a lot of communities, right? We're experiencing, rapid expansion.
Yeah.
There's developments being built all over the place, and quite honestly, the infrastructure can't keep up with it. So to me, it's especially, important to be aware and to be concerned about it here, because if they tried to build a data center here, it would totally wreck our infrastructure.
Yeah, a
So
lot of places there's been overdevelopment, so it's you got to
yeah,
catch up the infrastructure before you get something
exactly.
like this.
That's right.
So last question to you.
Sure.
What are you expecting? What do you want to get out of the event, besides, just the main topic of data centers, but really to hear from the speakers tonight, what are you looking forward to the most?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if this is what I'm going to get, but what I'm looking for is like a Christian's perspective,
Yeah.
right? And how we're to approach these things, being founded in the Word of God, because really that's how we should make our decisions as Christians, right? Is AI evil? I don't know. But I want to learn more about what these guys know, so that then I can make informed decisions based on what the Word of God says.
I love that. We always have to lead with that. So thank you
Sure.
so much, Tom. Appreciate
My
your
pleasure.
time. Looking forward to
Appreciate you
it.
guys being here.
Of course. Thank you. We'll be right back. We're back here today. Right now, we are here with Alex with the Young People's Alliance. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so we're an organization of 4,000 young people from across the country. We have about 90 different chapters in 16 different states,
Wow.
and we really work to restore the American dream for young people. And one of the big portions of that in that work is on AI,
Mm.
especially around the economic opportunity, the promises. America is the land of opportunity. AI is really decreasing opportunity, especially for young people right now. So we focus on that, but then also like our community and society and how AI is kind of addicting us to online areas and realms, which means in-person community and society for our generation has really decreased and caused major issues.
No, you're absolutely right about that. I want to ask you, where are the young people at that you've talked to on this issue? Where are they at, concerns wise, or maybe pros and cons? Where are they thinking about the future of this?
Yeah, so young people, I would say in general, I'm the national organizing director for the Young People's Alliance, so I go all across the place, the 16 different states, about 90 different chapters that we
Wow.
have, talking to regular young people on the street, wherever, about AI. So for our generation, I think there's a whole host of concerns. Whether it means AI really taking away opportunity and replacing a lot of the functions of jobs. I talked to one artist in Phoenix, in fact, who, when I just started talking to him about AI, he was like, I hate AI. It is literally replacing all of what I do
Mhm.
and doesn't feel like art has any genuine value anymore because all of this quote unquote AI slop that is out there. Or I talked to like computer scientists in Silicon Valley even who they're studying computer science and they're really concerned about how these coding mechanisms and tools are going to be negatively affecting that. But then also a lot of people on the other realms are concerned about their privacy and their safety.
Yeah.
Things like flock cameras, which because of the way that they synthesize data and collect everything, has been able to be misused countless times, hundreds, even thousands of times by our friends in law enforcement, unfortunately. Similarly, with these flock cameras, they're not accurate then all the time, right? There's about like a 6 to 10% inaccuracy
Wow.
and has resulted in a lot of people like being like accused of crimes when they were not even there and it was just the
Wow.
flock cameras systems not working properly.
Wow, I didn't even think about that one. That's
Yeah.
interesting. All right. So, what is the organization doing right now? What are some of the things coming up, and
Okay.
where you guys are at?
Yeah, so we're really focused on what we can do to really address the issues of AI for young people. We understand that obviously we cannot control what companies do. We cannot control how companies are implementing AI.
Right.
What we want to do to ensure that young people still have the opportunity to gain like good employment is look at how can we change and shift both our education system and our training system
Mm.
to reflect the nuances of AI in the marketplace and the changes that that is causing for young people and economic opportunity. So it's looking at like apprenticeship programs. What policy can we do to incentivize those apprenticeship programs that allow people to get into entry level jobs, get their foot in the door, and build the skills that they need? Similarly, in like college, high school, community college education, looking at programs that allow young people to build their skills when it comes to things like technology and AI to be prepared for the workforce.
Yeah, I was gonna say in the education system right now, I feel like we've gotten away from real skills and applying them. We got to get back to that. But what are you seeing? Maybe are some of the students? I mean, some I've seen are using ChatGPT all the
Oh,
time for
for sure.
things. So has that been a concern? Have you guys talked about that yet?
Yeah, so for us, I think that that can actually be beneficial to a lot of
Yeah.
young people, right? Like a lot of young people are leveraging these AI chatbots, whether it means ChatGPT, Claude, whatever,
Mhm.
Gemini, to get a lot of access to information, and it's lowering the barriers to becoming young entrepreneurs. So there are some good stuff with AI. Our organization, what we want to do is better prepare young people for the new AI marketplace, but secondarily ensure that young people and AI can be safely and responsibly developed and
Yeah.
pushed into our society.
So do you think that our education system should incorporate something like that as a class or some kind of
Yeah.
thing where they can AI literacy almost where they can learn how to use it effectively instead of let it, get out of control?
Yeah, I would say if, local community, I think first off, it's a local community decision, right?
Yeah,
Like education lives at the heart and with the parents that are,
I agree.
you know, um, being involved with it, right?
Mhm.
So if local communities are okay with that, then I think that's an amazing idea. Yes, I think it's really important to recognize that AI is being used in our workplace, and young people need the skills to be able to know how to best leverage it, and be best prepared, right? Like, for example, 20, 30 years ago, if you didn't know how to type, use a computer, you're at a massive, massive deficit.
Exactly.
When computers, the internet, typing was becoming part of like the job market and becoming part of all economic life. The same thing's going to happen with AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time
course.
and your answers. That's awesome what you guys are doing with the organization. If people are wondering where they can learn more, where can they go?
Of course, yeah. So to learn more about our work, especially making sure that AI is responsible, go to youngpeoplesalliance.org, search it up online, or also you can follow us online on Instagram at Young People's Alliance.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll be
Thank
right
you.
back.
All of our live stream viewers. Before we get started, I just want to really, before we do anything else, I want to say a really big thank you to Victory Church for allowing us the opportunity to come here and speak today, and letting us use the space. We really appreciate that. I want to remind you, if any of you have any questions, so you were given an index card in your program today. If you have any questions throughout this tonight's for any of the panelists, what I want you to do is fill out your little index card and then hold it up, and I will be sitting right over there. And I will come over and I'll grab your index card, make sure your question gets answered. If you are a live stream viewer and you have a question, just do me a favor and put your question in the comment section below, and I will make sure that gets passed along to Ryan and our panelists. So, all right, you guys ready to get started tonight? Who's excited to hear about AI? Fantastic. So first up, I'm going to call up our very own Pastor Rick Stevens. He is going to pray us in for the night. And then followed by him will be Keith Flaw with our pledge. So if y'all want to stand, we're going to pray. Thank you.
Well, welcome. We're glad you're here. And we at our events always like to start by talking to God and asking Him to help us and guide us. So let's do that tonight, shall we? Father, we're grateful for this opportunity that you've given us, for this church that's made its facilities available. But most, we're grateful for your presence that come and grant to us the understanding that we need. You admonish us in the scriptures to ask you for understanding, and when we need wisdom, to ask you for wisdom. And certainly on a subject as important as this tonight, with this new innovation, unknown future, we need your guidance, your wisdom. Give us courage to hear it and to follow it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. The flag is, for those in the audience, the flag is behind you. I guess they have one behind me too. I didn't realize that. So we'll turn this way. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I turn the mic over, are there any veterans in the audience that I'd like to ask you to stay standing and be recognized? Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to get kicked off with our evening with our very first panel. But before we do that, I'm going to call up our Chief of Operations, Ryan Kennedy, and he's going to give you guys a brief overview of kind of what has transpired so far on the policy end of things. Ryan Kennedy.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you, everybody who's here. Thank you who are watching at home on the live stream. This is a great event tonight. Thank you again for Victory Church. I really wanted to start by setting the stage. What's happening in Florida and nationally with AI? Well, little secret is not very much, and that's the sad part. We don't have really any laws on the books to protect us here in the state of Florida and protect children in particular in the state of Florida. We've already seen cases of children committing suicide here in Florida. We've seen acts of violence with the help of AI. We know that the youth in particular are so adversely affected by this technology. And there's been tons and tons of noise brought up in the legislative body. You may remember Governor DeSantis calling a special session on this, having the AI Bill of Rights. You may remember, may have heard about the moratorium that the federal government was trying to pass last year, 10 years banning AI regulation in the states. We're going to get into all that tonight with our expert panelists. But the reason I've come up here is to say that as you're listening to these experts, please listen to what they say because there's a lot of information. The other topic we're talking about besides just general AI is data centers. We've all had concerns about data centers. I've talked to so many citizens here in the state of Florida that have concerns about what's it going to do to my power costs, what's it going to do to my water, what's it going to do to the noise. Famously, there's ranchers out west who are saying that their cattle aren't reproducing now where these data centers are at. Anecdotally, right, of course, but still, they're concerned about this. And so what are some of the things going on with data centers? We have two great experts, one very focused on the energy side of things and one very focused on the overall data center side of things. And that is what we're here tonight for, is to inform you and equip you and to talk about what are the next steps here in the state of Florida when it comes to that. We at the Florida Citizens Alliance have been fighting since summer of last year, so it's been over a year since we've jumped into this battlefield. We've been in DC a couple times. We've been in the state legislative body numerous times. Myself and the policy team, we were up there well over 15 times this year talking about this data center issue. So data centers and AI in particular when it comes to affecting our children. And so thank you everybody for coming. And like I said, we're going to go ahead and get started with our first panel. So, and it's going to be about data centers. So I'm going to call up Sam and Tom to talk about the data centers. So first want to, because we do have a live stream audience, and I'll just remind everybody on our live stream that is watching, if you have questions, drop it in the comments. We have a great team member that's keeping track of that, and if you're in the audience, raise up those index cards and we'll get to them. But of course, we have some questions to start off. But before we get to those questions, I want to have some time to introduce the two panelists, two experts on this topic. So I'll go to my closest first. Tom, take a couple minutes telling us who you are and what you're doing here in this topic.
Sure. I've been in this space, not just the IA space, but the public sphere of activism influencing. I used to joke that I was kind of Barack Obama before Barack Obama. I've been working in the space of activism back in the 90s with Empower America, groups like Citizens for a Sound Economy. Beyond that, we created Freedom Works. So it's something I've always endeavored to effectuate public policy. It's the first love I have. So when this topic came up, I was contacted. I'll make a really simple story short, and that is, I was contacted and someone said, "What do you think about the issues related to AI?" And I said, "It's a scary future. It's a great tool, but it's a scary future unless we put safeguards in place." And the guys who contacted me had already been working in that space, and so we shared some stories and realized that the attention needs to be placed on it now. It was too important. So my experience from the past of organizing groups for fighting for public policy in the local, state, and federal level helped us design a framework which became humansfirst.com. And we hired the most experienced person in the nation on activism as our director and our leader in the process. And this is where we are today. It's amazing. When we started this back in December of last year, no one knew this. In February, we were asked on radio up in Jacksonville about what issue will affect the November election that is not on anyone's radar. And I said AI, and they're like, "What do you mean AI?" We talked about it, and look today. You're here. It's live streaming. It's the most important issue we face, not only individually, but our families, our society, our culture, and the world. That's about it in a nutshell there.
Thank you, Tom. Sam, I want to kick it over to you.
Well, I am not the Obama of politics.
Conservative politics.
No, Sam Romaine. I'm the chairman of an organization called Americans for Energy Dominance. What we do is we advocate for regular people and the utility bills that they have to pay, because a utility bill is not a bill that you cannot not pay. You can't avoid it. It's going to stick with you. As much as I don't want to pay my utility bill, I have to, right? And this really started, interestingly, before I kind of got connected into this whole data center conversation, was really about just the right for a homeowner to essentially be sovereign, to generate your own power at your own home. To start with a solar conversation, putting the right to put solar panels and a battery on your own home was actually being stopped by local governments. I don't want you to do that. I was actually on Fox News one time. I said, ask yourself why the utility company would not want you to generate your own power. There's a famous quote, some guy we all probably know says, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy," right? Well, I'm not a huge fan of owning nothing and being happy. I like being a sovereign citizen in the sense that I own guns, I have a well, I have a septic tank, and I'd like to be able to generate my own power. So when a hurricane comes through, I'm not sitting there waiting for the government or the utility company to come save me. And the fact that the utility companies and the government can basically tell you no kind of grinds my gears a little bit. Now, that transformed really more into a much bigger conversation about data centers. I met Tom and another person from Humans First in Fort Meade, Florida. Have you guys all heard of the big hyperscale data center going into Fort Meade, Florida? 1.2 gigawatt data center. And I went there just to kind of check it out. And as I was listening to the public comments, it's like, I know this the energy lane of this, but that conversation there is really what kind of kickstarted me to get into the data center conversation. And I gave a public comment there in really true support, right? Remember this one? Yeah, I gave great testimony and support, sarcastic support of this data center. That kind of went viral online and got me connected to the Humans First organization, went with them to DC one time, and really everyone else who's been involved in this. So my lane, I know data centers. I will just put this out there preemptively is I tend to be a more neutral stance on data centers, not necessarily pro them, not necessarily against them, and we'll probably get into that some more, but really my specialty is really coming down to energy and then what surrounds these data centers.
Thank you. And like I said, so I'm going to start off by a question. We've heard a lot about concerns about data centers. Nationally, it's been a topic. You'll hear some things about China and all that. We'll maybe get into that a little bit later. But first off, can you tell us the difference between what a hyperscale data center is and what other data centers are? Tom, you want to start off?
Sure. I'm going to leave the technical side of the energy size to the expert on that. But I mean, obviously, the size is based on the capacity of electrical generation, the use of electrical energy, and the capacity to generate product, which is the processors just using so much energy to create greater information, larger access, more scraping of information across the data sphere, so to speak. But if you think about it in terms of size, just to give you one conceptual understanding, one hyper data center, for instance, in Richmond, Louisiana, is, if anyone's ever been to Central Park in New York, it's larger than Central Park in New York. So that's, when you think of the size of a hyper data center, that is an example of the size of one. Now, we have had data centers. In fact, we have about 5,000, 5,100, 5,200 of them right now, most of which 4,000 of them are regular data centers, ones we've already been using with our cell phone and our computer technology for a long time now. But think about this, how long we've had cell technology, and just think about this for 1 second. We are already outdating those data centers, and that's why they need these hyper data centers for capacity. So that's the short half-life of the regular data center, and now we're beginning this new age of hyper data centers. How quickly will they become obsolete? So I want you to think about it in that concept, but if you want to talk about the specific size generation.
So there is, technically, there's no legal definition for what is a hyperscale data center in most places. Florida has started to define that as any data center that is requiring over 50 megawatts of power, which for hyperscale terms would be small. For everyone's home usage, that would be quite large. So I live in Lakeland, so I know a lot about Lakeland, Florida. So I'll use some of that for example. The largest customer on Lakeland Electric's utility grid is 18 megawatts, and that's Publix, like the Publix, 18 megawatts. That's the largest user of power.
The headquarters.
Their manufacturing plant.
Yeah.
That's 18 megawatts. So Florida has started to define a hyperscaler as being 50 megawatts. Now in Florida, the average home uses, let's just call it 20,000 kilowatt hours a year. So that the smallest level of hyperscaler would be, I don't know, don't quote me perfectly on this, let's just call it 50,000 homes, right? Now for order of scale, the one in Fort Meade, for example, is a 1.2 gigawatt data center. That is equal to roughly the entire population of Jacksonville, which is our largest city in Florida, around 800,000 homes. Is that one facility in Fort Meade is 800,000 homes. Pretty expensive. So it comes down to a technical classification of the power draw that the facility takes. But you're right. We have had data centers in Florida and across this entire nation for a long time, very small ones. Actually, there's a whole lot of them in Lakeland, and not a single one even makes the top 100 list of largest consumers of power. The data centers of old were primarily, let's just call it like big hard drives. Like you have a computer at home, you got a hard drive in it, it stores to a terabyte if you're lucky on a good computer, right? These are just much larger hard drives. They are not the same. The reason that you're getting hyperscale data centers is primarily driven by, almost exclusively driven by AI and the actual compute power this AI takes to run. So it's no longer just a hard drive. It actually ends up being, I'm going to water this down a little bit. It's more like the graphics card in your computer, and a whole lot of them, and they're much more powerful than hard drives.
Thank you. And one of the things I think that the concerns that people have brought up is related to the energy requirements of these data centers. So I'm go back to you, Sam. One of the things that I've heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but is that you know, that there's concern that the power companies don't currently have all the infrastructure to accommodate for hyperscale data centers in Florida or multiple. Is that true? Can you kind of walk us through the power concerns there?
I would say that that is true in probably the entire country. So the grid was built 100 years ago, maybe even a little more than 100 years ago. And so our grid 100 years ago, if you could imagine, they were not building the grid for AI in the 1920s, okay? So a lot has changed. We are not where we need to be. The last time that we had major load growth in this nation was when the invention of the air conditioning came out. Since then, we've not really had load growth. Maybe a little bit because there's more technology, more connecting. But at the same time, technology got better and it used less power, and you had these homes that had better insulation, whatever it may be. So the demand on the total grid has been relatively flat. And so for the first time in a long time, my lifetime certainly, we're actually seeing major load growth. And so the fact of it is that right now there are a lot of utilities, especially here in Florida, who have just put out this last session their 10-year plan, okay? And they've almost all have said, oh, we're long on generation, meaning that they have the power. Well, what that truly means is that they might have 2 gigawatts of extra capacity. Okay, great. In a normal situation, 2 gigawatts of extra capacity, that's a lot. That's 1.6 million homes. Like, that's a lot of extra power. However, that is less than 2 data centers. And right now in Florida, hyperscale data centers. And right now in Florida, every single day I see a new conversation happening that this county's looking at a hyperscaler, that county's looking at a hyperscaler. And so the capacity that we are allegedly long on has dwindled almost immediately, right? So it's not there anymore.
I would add to that, not only is it not there anymore, we have decommissioned our capacity to generate power in the United States, and we've done it internationally. Look at Europe, look at Germany. Germany has reduced its capacity 100-fold. And this is insane. This is what made America great is our cheap energy. That's what made America different. That's why we became the provider of sustenance of freedom around the world in World War II, is because of our energy capacity, our ability to produce energy at a cheap scale. The Tennessee Valley Project, you may remember from your history books. The reality is this is what made America great. And right now, we're taxing that capacity. We've reduced capacity, and these little bits of extra capacity we have that they think they're going to tap into is small and pittance compared to what they are planning to create and generate. And again, you're an expert, not I, in this subject, but I can read as well as anybody. And it still takes 8 to 10 years to add new capacity, not from existing capacity, but brand new permitting from planning to development. Is that about right?
Yeah, let's jump in right here. So first, real quick on the shutting down of generation. That is absolutely true. And you saw that primarily starting with Obama and then really dramatically under the Biden administration. And that is what people call this green new scam. And that the idea was that they were going to shut down coal plants and natural gas plants, which natural gas used to be green. It's not anymore, apparently. And they were going to shut this down and replace them with these solar farms, okay? And look, I'm just going to say this right up front. Solar's not bad, okay? Americans invented solar technology. It's to our detriment that we offshored it to China, but we invented this stuff. It's our technology. It's our innovation. The real problem comes down to the fact that when they turned off and blew up these coal plants, they didn't have a replacement, period. And they destroyed, literally destroyed what is called base load power. And the idea was to replace that with an intermittent power or like a peak load power. Not that solar peak load is bad. It's just it's a very complex topic, but we never actually built it. And so the way that utility companies work, real quick sidebar, the utility companies don't get paid on performance. They don't get paid because you use this much power, okay? The way they get paid is the more money they spend, they get a guaranteed return on equity. So when you destroy power generation and now you are forced, oh, please don't twist my arm, you're forced to now build billion-dollar projects where they get a guaranteed 10% return on equity, that's a better business than a bank.
Sign me up.
Now, as far as bringing new generation capacity online, currently, as of this moment, to get a new gas turbine is about 7 years. Okay, a nuclear power plant takes. I've never seen a new one.
In your lifetime, we haven't seen.
I'm 32. I've never seen a nuclear power
Yes.
plant come online. There are facilities that have been stuck in permitting longer than I have been alive, and there's a serious problem. And so, if we think that we're going to bring new generation online quickly and win this AI arms race, we're not. Okay, we're just not.
Just add, so a lot of people in the space, in the AI space, AI data center space, want to talk about those micronuclear reactors. They would be competing against these utilities, and so those utilities would not be so inclined to have Fort Meade, for instance, have its own little mini nuclear generator, because it would compete with their ability to increase their capacity.
Well, it's the same reason they don't want you to generate your own power.
Correct. So when they talk about that as a solution, that'll be litigated longer than than this last case.
There's also no mechanism for it either.
There's no, it's not here yet. I just want to add one more piece of perspective. My day job is I trade commodities in the feed and dairy industries. So as you mentioned, many of my customers have talked to me about the issues they have with their heifers and raising new cattle in Texas and places around the country where it's near these data centers, the noise pollution that affects them, and the reality of their land management. So one thing we've never talked about in America is the strategic importance of our grain and feed and dairy and our basically our agricultural production. But that's exactly where they want to place these data centers. Why? Because they think it's flat land typically, so that helps them, number one. Number two, there's not a lot of competition for political outcomes because there's fewer people, right? And so they understand that those are targets that are ripe for exploitation. But the reality is, just like coastland, we are not making more strategic feed-producing land in this world. It's reducing. And every time you put an eyesore or a warehouse called an AI data center on that, the remediation of that land, we have no idea about because we've never done a study on it. So that land will never come back into production. I just want to tax on that just because I have a unique perspective just because of what I do.
So do you remember when we were in Fort Meade together, to your point of these rural areas, that developer stood in front of a room of 200 people, maybe even more than that, and said, well, this city's kind of poor, right? You remember this?
The condescension. Oh my gosh, yes.
Don't you want a data center?
I'm sorry. Tap me back on that just for a second. That point, this was a company out of Virginia, and think about this for a second. The people of Fort Meade, number one, did not know who their neighbor was going to be at the end of the day, who was going to be owning that data center. It could have been just speculative property that this developer could have just decided to buy this property, develop the land, develop the data center, get the NDAs in place with the politicians so no one else knows what's going on, and then eventually sell it to a AI company. We don't know. No one knows the outcome because of the NDAs, and that's half the problem. This is one of the reasons folks like us who are conservatives got involved in this space, is because we believe that this issue is essentially a conservative one because we believe in the consent of the governed. We, the people, should decide who our neighbors are in the industrial process and how our tax dollars are spent. So that's why a conservative like myself felt very important to get in this space and help focus people's attention on the issues. And it's not a matter of I'm for or against. As a conservative, I think it's most important that we are involved because it is the consent of the governed, as we talked about 1776 with a nice little necklace.
Yeah.
Over there.
Well, thank you both for really introducing this topic. Covered a lot of my questions, so I'm going to go to the audience. Do you have questions? Of course, we want to hear your questions. If you have the note cards written out, please hand them in to Christy, because again, it's about audience participation. Those online again too, submit your questions as well, and we're watching that. But I'll just start off by saying, because one of the things, and I'll go to Tom. One of the things I'm hearing in the DC kind of circles is, well, these data centers are national security interests. And so, with that brings a whole nother level of layer of, for one, non-transparency sometimes, but two, also, it can make it a target, right? And so can kind of, Tom, talk about that a little bit.
So the gaslighting of that, of that it's a national security interest. But first of all, we just found out a week and a half ago, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, that several of these AI companies have subsidiaries that are working directly with China. So obviously, their priority is not America's national interests. So let's put that one to bed right away, because none of these companies pledge a loyalty to the United States of America. They pledge a loyalty to their shareholders, and that's all that matters to them, first. Secondly, even if they are America First businesses, that begs the question then is, what are the alternatives? What are the solutions? I mean, let's talk about this, because the Manhattan Project, when that was contrived under a secret umbrella, right? It had a singular focus. But right now, we don't know what that singular focus is. We are outpacing the Chinese right now, and I think everyone in the space, pro, con, in between, is supportive of the fact that we need to beat China. But that's not the issue that has to be decided. Where do we need to beat China? When do we need to beat China? If the only solution they come up with is to destroy rural America, well, I don't think that's the only solution. That just tells us that they're bullheaded. There's other solutions. And I'm just going to throw this out here just because it's a thought, not necessarily because it's an answer. It's a thought. Let's discuss this. Every major city in America has dilapidated, outdated parts of the community in the cities that were of high industry at one point. Warehouse districts already have electrical capacity programmed into it that's underutilized or not utilized at all. So if there is no noise pollution, which we obviously know there is, but they ignore that. If there is no noise pollution, because if it's okay for rural America, it should be okay for the city dwellers as well, right? So, but every city is built upon a major body of water, whether it's a lake, a river, an ocean, essential for the cooling process of these AI data centers, and it's specifically important for the hyper data centers because the hyperdome of heat that they create from the processing next process. So if we want to have a dialogue and a conversation about solutions, let's do that. But they have not wanted to participate in any of that. So if it's a national security issue, we're all for national security. Let's all sit at the table, let's dialogue about this, and let's figure out how it is. Again, consent of the governed. But ultimately, that's not what they want. They want their profit, they want their earnings, and they want to move on. They want to cash out and get going. That's all they care about. And I'll just finish on this. There's about 5 examples in the last 6 months of where the national security has been put on risk. AI agents from tests that they've done or experiments they've done within their own culture of that company have escaped and caused major problems with competitors and other industries. That doesn't sound like protecting national security. That sounds really dangerous. In fact, it is. In fact, one was released for 2 months without the internal authorities of their own company recognizing that there was a problem. So when we talk about we want to see security, we want to see protection, we want to see safety for our children, we're not saying this because we're pro-China or we're funded by China. We're saying this because we love America.
Thank you. Now, I kind of want to, we have a number of good questions from the audience. So I'm going to first start off by saying, in particular, and we've seen this in Fort Meade, but what is the advantage of why you see the politicians pushing for these data centers? Can you kind of go into that a little bit? I mean, there's people who say they've signed NDAs and they're withholding information from the public, but you know, at least let's take Fort Meade, for example. What is the advantage of pushing that there, Sam?
It's money. I don't think genuinely that city commissioners in Fort Meade, or quite frankly anywhere, are getting brown paper bags of cash or duffel bags of cash. I don't think that's happening. But when you look at just think about yourself, you are charged with an obligation of being a city commissioner or a mayor. The city's success is under your stewardship personally, right? And when you see an opportunity for your city to go from a $1.5 million annual budget, Fort Meade, to a $15 million annual income off of one business that requires 50 parking spaces and not a whole lot of crime happens at data centers, it's not a bad deal on paper for them to want to do that. And so that's why I think these cities are doing it. It's primarily money driven. I don't think you're seeing, again, brown paper bags of cash going to these city commissioners. I wish some of them wish they were, but that's probably not the truth of it. As far as the NDAs go, in my experience, I'll push back. I know the public sentiment on this is very much like, oh, these commissioners, they have NDAs and they're hiding it. In my experience, personally, the NDA is typically with the developer and the end user, not necessarily the city commissioners or county commissioners and the developer themselves. Now, that said, SB 484, which passed into law, does allow for NDAs to exist. And to be super clear on this whole thing, I don't think NDAs should exist at all. I don't think we should be trying to be bringing business into a town under secrecy. I don't agree with that at all. I just also think that if we're going to advocate to end this practice of NDAs, that it's very important, and I've done a lot of public comments, I know you both have as well, the thing that will lose the respect of the person on the other side of the table, the person at the dais who you want to convince to end the practice of NDAs, the thing that will lose their interest and their respect in your comment is not being accurate. And so I get a little cautious when people are saying, oh, you have NDA, you're lying, when that may not exactly be the truth. There are NDAs in this process. They're typically with the developer and the end user. So that's why Stonebridge, they wouldn't tell us, is this TikTok? Is it Flock? Is it Netflix? They wouldn't even tell us.
Or if it's just speculation.
Or just speculation,
Right.
and they wouldn't tell us. They don't want that to be known. And I actually give applaud to Microsoft, who has led the charge on saying, if we're bringing a data center to your town, we will not have an NDA. I wish they'd all do that. But I just want to be very careful as we're going out and advocating. We want to make sure that we're being honest and truthful in what we're advocating for, so that way we can actually be effective in it too.
I think one of the things that, and I don't disagree with anything you said there, a lot of these NDAs, though, have part of the problem with the NDAs is it doesn't allow for the transfer of information to the public. And that's crucial in making the decision, we as the people, on who would we want as our neighbor, that land, whether it's, there have been no long-term studies. So these short-term moratoriums that have been placed around a lot of counties are really instructive because it gives time for us to look at these details. What is the true water usage? I mean, right now, you just saw this last week that every single newspaper, news channel, news influencer has been focusing on the water. Why? Because they've been giving these talking points in the last week to push out this water narrative, and the water narrative is an important one. Now, the comparison that we hear all the time, and I've been debating this on radio, is that they're saying, well, golf courses use more water. Well, yeah, golf courses also use reclaimed water. So you're comparing apples and oranges, and it's really important. This is the process. Because they have been prepared for this fight, they have a talking point that they already have prepared and ready. So if you don't have time to work up challenges to these talking points, they push through things through zoning or wherever else to get this moved too fast. And that's why it's important for us to have these slowdown moments for short-term moratoriums. Not that we advocate for these, but it's important for the people to be involved. So if we have to shorten that process and say, okay, we need 6 months to review this, understand why is the county, or why is this commission giving tax abatements, which is a gift to the developer, gift to the end user of our taxpayer money to bring in someone who, you're right about 50 spaces on most of these places, but that's a requirement based on regulatory spaces per occupancy, right? And size of a venue. It's not per person type of thing. These average data centers of these hyper data centers employ about the same amount of people as your average McDonald's, 15 to 30 people. That's not a lot of people. So if you're saying you're going to increase the tax base, sure, these people may be getting a lot of money, which that's fine. And there's 30 or 40 people are going to be bringing in a lot of income. But if they are poor towns, as they tell us they're populated or pushing into, isn't it important for us to know why are we giving them a tax abatement? If they are so helpful for our community and going to be such a great friend to us, why are we loaning them money? And like in the case of Fort Meade was going to basically be front loading some of the money and be paid back over a period of time. And so these are the things that the reason we have to have the slowdown is so that all the information's on the table so we can be informed and share in that decision. And that's at Humans First, that's one of our goals is to make sure that people, you, get empowered in the process so that you can make a good decision for you. We're not making the decision for you. That's not one of the reasons we're fighting this fight. We want you to be able to make the decision with the information, but you have to have that first.
Well, and these tax breaks, the one at Fort Meade, if you guys are keeping up with that one, they got a 90% tax abatement, $150 million over 10 years. And the formula, and look, as much as I want to blame my county commissioners because that's the easy thing to do, we have to give a little bit of grace and say they had no idea what they were dealing with. And they have a very simple formula for businesses who are coming into the county. And that developer went to them and said, hey, look, I'm bringing in $2.5 billion of infrastructure projects. I'm bringing in 400 jobs that all pay a minimum of 130 grand a year. The county commission, they're like, that's amazing. And they have a formula, and they applied the formula, and it came out to a 90% tax abatement. The problem is that nobody knows anything.
And
to your
those
point.
most of those jobs were construction jobs, which are great.
They're certainly not permanent jobs.
No, they're not permanent jobs. Most of them were construction, which is great for that local economy for a period of time, right? But when they leave, that sucking sound goes with them to the next project.
And the tax abatement stays.
And the tax abatement stays. So these are the things, information is power, right? And it's why we're about to launch this nationwide bus tour, because we want to bring this information to all these local communities that are being targeted by these. It boils down to we're against corporate welfare of any kind. So in that process, we want people to be informed. I'm sorry.
No, I think this is all important things, and these are concerns, and this is, we've all heard about this stuff. So real quick, just let's, another question from the audience, and then I want to focus on some solutional aspects. But before we get to the solutional aspects, let's talk about this. Where in Florida have these data centers, I mean, we just talked about Fort Meade a lot in detail, but there's been other data centers proposed here in Florida. Can you just give me a little bit of a rundown of where else?
You have a better.
I've not been keeping up with all of them too much. I do know there's moratoriums happening all over the place. There's that Project Tango, which is a really hot topic. But I think there's a lot of them happening that people don't even know about. So the problem with the data center, the way this whole thing works is that this starts in zoning. And when you read the city or county's agenda, and it talks, we're going to rezone the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter of section 42 in quadrant A3. No one knows what that means. No one has any idea what that means. And so then the county commission or the city commission then has a defense being like, well, nobody called. It's like, well, of course we didn't call. It didn't say we're putting a data center, we're rezoning this heavy industrial for a data center. We don't know what that is. And so there's very likely way more data centers in process than anyone in this room is even aware of.
So this is the process we discovered. I hate to say it, but going back to Fort Meade, because we learned so much in such a short period of time. So last year in November and December, October, November, and December, Fort Meade had some meetings on this, never talking about AI data centers, only talking about the need for rezoning and expanding some processes. Now, law requires you can only move up from one grade to the next grade in the zoning process. So you'll need multiple meetings to conduct that change. But the average person had no clue what was coming. But that's where we as an empowered electorate and people of understanding can help stop that process before it gets going, right? But that's where the NDAs came into play. Whereas at that point, there was no disclosure what the purpose of that rezoning was. An attorney goes in. Most of this doesn't even take place in front of the audience. Most of this is on a consent agenda, which is done before a meeting even starts. They list the things on the consent agenda unless one of the members of the board disagrees and says we want to bring it to a full vote. It gets decided upon in the back door. I mean, in that back room before it ever sees the light of day. So there's less disclosure, less ability for you to impact the outcome. And that's why this process is difficult, right? Is because the information is too late delivered to you and we the people. But ultimately, that's one of the reasons we're doing this. We want to educate people, as to Sam said, about the process.
Well, like I said, I wanted to touch a little bit on solutions, and I'm going to go to Sam here because, again, one of the biggest concerns we've heard is energy, and particularly this hyperscale data center. So in your opinion, and you're kind of forecasting here, so give as much knowledge as you can give.
Let me get my crystal ball out.
Yeah. What exact, I mean, if we're, we talk about this war with China, which again, is one aspect, and there's some truth to that, and there's some not truth to a lot of not truth to that. But related to the energy side of the hyperscale data centers, what will it take in America, in your opinion, to get to the point of these hyperscale data centers? Are these even possible within the next couple of years, really, to be built?
No. So I'm just gonna say it. Don't throw tomatoes at me. I'm actually a big fan of AI. I use AI every single day for work and for fun. I'm a big user. I've been a tech guy forever. I used to work for John Deere programming tractors to drive themselves using satellites. Like that's my background. I'm a nerd, okay? I drive a Tesla because it drives me, right? Like I like technology. What I don't like are bad deals. I don't like when a data center developer comes into my town and says, "Aren't you guys so poor? Don't you want this?" without telling anyone what's going on. And also, I will say a couple things before I go into my future casting. I believe in our Constitution. I believe in the right of people and companies to do business. I believe in the Commerce Clause. I also believe in our Florida Constitution, the private property rights. If you own property, you have the right to develop it how you see fit. I believe in the Constitution, okay? So I have this internal struggle often about I don't love hyperscale data centers, but I also really enjoy our Constitution. I think we live in the greatest country that God's ever had on this planet. And so, how do you balance those two things? I don't know. What I'll say is I think hyperscale data centers have a lot of issues, a lot of challenges. I do also believe that the AI arms race with China is real. I'm not sure if you guys. So I use AI beyond like ChatGPT. I'm using all the different models, the APIs, the harnesses. And look, one of the most popular AI models that just got released ever was yesterday, which was GLM 5.3 Flash, a Chinese model. Okay. And so when we're saying, I'm going to hit on you a little bit, Tom. Sorry.
That's right.
When we say we're really far ahead in the AI race, kind of, but not a dominance. We're not an AI dominance position. We have more data centers by about tenfold, but China has more energy by about tenfold. And what we also know is that energy dominance leads to human flourishing and productivity. We know that. And we are energy constrained and China's not. Why? Because they don't have to wait 20 years to do an environmental NEPA review process for some lizard you've never heard of. Okay? They can just build things, and they're really good at building things. America's really good at litigating things. And so we do have an issue. Now, the other side of this is you're not seeing China develop hyperscale data centers. Why? Because we also know, based on history of our entire human history, that technology advances rapidly, especially like electronic technology, computers. When I was born, 1993, I think they were still doing like punch card coding, right? I don't even know what that is. We're not there anymore. I'm not that old. And that happens real fast. Okay, so these hyperscale facilities, are they even going to be important? Quite frankly, we're already looking at distributed edge computing. There are now companies right now, today, who will come and put a device in your house, and when it's connected to residential solar and a battery, you can process compute power at your home that actually has no noise, that actually creates no heat, that is not killing the obscure lizard I've never heard of, requires no additional power because you already have solar on your home and a battery backup. These are edge computing devices, and they will pay you. So NVIDIA and SPAN put this product out. You will pay $150 a month for power. Flat rate, that's your electricity and your internet. Combined bill, unlimited power. And they'll also pay you for how much you compute. Well, do you know how long it takes to install a box in my living room? About 30 minutes. You plug it into a wall, okay? It's that easy. Hyperscale data center cannot just be plugged into an outlet. It takes construction and building and permitting and rezoning, and then you gotta wait 7 years for a gas turbine, right? Like, if we are being honest with ourselves that we want to win this AI arms race, which I frankly do, if we're going to have sentient AI overlords, Terminator, I want them to be American Terminator, not Chinese Terminators, okay? I just do. Now, I think there's a paper I encourage everyone to look up, write it down. It's called AI 2027. It's a terrifying paper. You will not sleep at night, so read it in the morning. Ultimately, it says this. We are on an AI arms race, whether we like it or not, and the only outcome is going to be China wins or America wins. If America wins, we get to extend our time on Earth for a couple more years. If China wins, good night. And so I want to win this race. But do I think hyperscalers are how we win it? Hell no. Sorry, I shouldn't say that in church.
I'm sorry. First of all, we agree on everything you just said there. And I think at the very beginning I said this, is we don't even know what the half-life of the hyperscale data center is, right? And so we have no studies to understand that all this expense, these billions and billions and billions of dollars that we're funneling much of it is speculative dollars. And we're blowing up our 401ks because everyone's overly invested in this space. So we've created this bubble. China is making the same stuff, pennies on the dollar comparatively, and they're focusing like a laser beam in only certain areas, whereas we're broad and tall in the search for this solution or this mythical god of AI that they're searching for. But the reality is that's one of their goals. They want us to do this. And so when we talk about national security, my concern is how quickly they can harm and destroy every one of our 401ks, our retirement incomes, our pension funds. And by the way, one of the reasons our local politicians love the fact they're getting some of this money is because we've underfunded pensions funds. If you're a local retired from city or county or federal or state government, your pension fund is underfunded. So when this bubble bursts for AI, this technology that we've overspent on, it's going to cost every one of us dearly. And the Chinese are banking on it, and they're excited that we're spending all this money stupidly, as opposed to laser focused, as Sam said. The Chinese understand things in a longer game order. Our focus is on return on investment today and tomorrow. And so the danger of the AI is we win it and then we lose it. But I just want to say this. Every single one of the tech CEOs understands that humanity is at stake here too. Because if AI goes, back in March we released the, we didn't, but a group of allies released the AI documentary. And it is a chilling talking to the CEOs of all these major companies and where they see the future, and every one of them says, if we make one wrong step, every dystopian novel you've read, every dystopian movie you've seen goes from fiction to nonfiction like that, and humanity's at risk. So the point is, this is not something we can dare get wrong. So not having a conversation is not the way not to get something wrong. Having a conversation is how you get things right. And we have to think about this in the long term, not just the immediate gain of tomorrow.
I also just want to say real quick, if we're looking at sentient AI overlords and getting it wrong, do you guys actually think that like Sam Altman and Dario are like the dudes? God, they're weird. I mean, DeSantis even said this. He goes, it's not just that we don't like hyperscale data centers. When you watch a video of Sam Altman, like you feel it in your core. You don't trust these people.
We're in a church. We're in a space that is unique at the moment. And think about this right now. The people, as Sam just referred to, none of them are folks who go to church. I just want to put it in those terms. None of them are of the belief that there's a higher order being that they have loyalty towards, right? They have loyalty to themselves, and they think they're smarter than everyone else, including the God that you may worship.
Well, like I said, folks, thank you both, Sam and Tom, for talking about this topic of AI data centers, shining some light on the truth versus reality, truth versus fact, and fiction when it comes to them. We're going to have a quick intermission for food. However, so for those on the live stream, stay tuned. We'll be back in about 30 minutes, and we're going to have a great discussion then at that time on AI policy, generally speaking, and all the concerns about AI when it comes to children and families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So we're going to give our panelists a round of applause, please. Thank them while they head out. And before we head across the hall to the fellowship hall to eat, what good would we be doing if we didn't pray into that meal? So if everyone would like to bow their heads, I'm going to pray us into our dinner. Father God, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for this opportunity to learn more about these AI data centers and AI policy. We ask you to please bless this food we're getting ready to eat, nourish it to our bodies, help us prevent sickness and disease, and help us all to have a wonderful rest of the evening. Lord, we thank you. We love you. And we ask all of that in Jesus' name. All right, if everyone would like to go right behind us into the fellowship hall, we're going to break for a brief intermission to eat. If you are watching online, we will be back in about, Ryan, we will be back in about how long? About 30 minutes.
All right, guys, that was the first panel. Had some great information there, great panelists, and honestly, a good conversation back and forth. We will be back in about 30 minutes with another panel, a few more panelists coming up, so don't go anywhere. It's going to be great continuing the conversation on AI and data centers, and especially how it affects you, your community, your family, all across this country and this state of Florida. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. 30 minutes. Come back. We'll be here with more coverage on Coastal Conservative News.
data centers in that first panel. So I am really excited about our next panel. One of my favorite human beings in the whole entire planet is a panelist in our next panel. There is never a time when this man is in the same room as me that I don't learn something that I didn't already know. So I know you guys are in for a really big treat right now. Our next panel is on AI policy, and it is with, who do we have today? I know we replaced one person. Can you switch over there? Yes, I don't want to mess up your last name, Amy. I was going to butcher it for a minute there. We have Alex Dre, Amy Kramer, there we go, and Alex Newman are our panelists. If you guys want to come on up here and have a seat while I introduce you guys, I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves, and our very own Ryan Kennedy, and please welcome them to the stage. Thank you, Alex.
Well, thank you, everybody. Again, thank you to our great panelists. That first panel was great, I think, right, guys? I think we had a lot of great information. And now we're going to get into the actual technology of AI itself, and some of the concerns and those sorts of things. But first, like I said, I want to go through the table. So Amy, again, closest to me.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight, and to Victory Church for hosting us. And thanks for my panelists for being up here. I'm Amy Kramer. I'm chairwoman of Humans First. We are a new organization, a grassroots organization focused on putting guardrails around big tech, reining them in, and hoping to stop superintelligence. I'm one of the founders of the modern day Tea Party movement. I've been politically active for 17 plus years now. I'm the founder of Women for Trump and also Women for America First. So I have been a huge supporter of President Donald Trump's and have been politically active throughout the years here in Florida and across the nation. So I'm excited to be here tonight. And this is a new topic for me. I'm not a tech expert, y'all. I'm just a mom who has common sense and knows right from wrong and knows what needs to be done here.
Yes, Alex,
This is
go ahead.
Amy. Don't undersell yourself. But this is the panel of the A's. I love it. My name's Alex Dre. I'm the national organizing director for the Young People's Alliance. The Young People's Alliance, we're a 4,000 member organization of young people from across the country. We're in about 16 different states. We have about 90 different chapters. And our work is really to ensure that young people can actually achieve the promises of the American dream, whether it means being able to afford and buy a house, whether it means to have the opportunity to get a good, stable career, or whether it means bringing back a sense of community for our generation that unfortunately big tech has had an onslaught on. When that specifically comes to AI, we're really focused on the questions around what are the dangers that AI is posing in terms of reducing economic opportunity for young people, and how do we respond to those dangers, looking at what do we have to change with our training and education systems around that, and then also how is AI kind of like ruining and hurting our sense of community as a generation together with these online addictions and AI chatbots really steering us off online and really hurting our sense of humanity and relationships with each other. I'm also a Florida native, 23 years old, just straight out of college, really trying to work, get to where the amazing folks are here today.
Hey guys, I'm Alex. I'm a dad of 6 children. I'm a journalist. I write books. I try to expose evildoers as best I can. And I think AI is probably the most consequential technology in human history. So I think for the people who aren't really paying attention or trying to put their head in the sand, you better pay attention.
Well, thank you, each of you, for being here. I'm first going to start off by, Florida Citizens Alliance, we care about children and the youth. So I'm actually going to start with Alex Dre, the resident expert on the youth. But what are you most concerned about when it comes to AI impacting the youth?
For me, it's the whole host of threats that AI has for our generation. In my role, I have the pleasure of talking to young people across the country about what are they struggling with in their aspirations and their dreams for their lives, and how they're trying to achieve those dreams. And in tons of those conversations, AI comes up as a massive concern and a massive threat. I was in Phoenix about a month ago, and I talked to this artist, and he was talking to me about this thing called AI slop art, which is basically AI generated art, and how that's A, just ruining his future, but also B, like ruining the sense of like, what is real art? You're seeing that in film, you're seeing that in music, you're seeing that on social media, being unable to tell whether this social media post is real or not. Unfortunately, you're seeing that also with political ads, which is really, really scary, right? So I think it's that generational consequence of that opportunity of what is real, what is fake, the impact that these things are having on our communities, our relationships with each other. Tech in general has really harmed our relationships with one another, whether it means being addicted to online spaces, not being able to like communicate, form social skills with one another, or subsequently with these AI chatbot companions, which try to act like your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your parent, and they know a lot more information. We can get to, I think we're going to get into that, Ryan. Then because you're telling them your deepest, darkest secrets, right? So they get you addicted. You can't like make relationships with other folks, or you're wanting to be having these AI girlfriends because they're so addictive and they're designed to be so addictive. So I mean, it's a whole host of those threats about what's real or not, our sense of community, economic opportunity. A lot of these entry-level jobs being replaced, and young people can't get their foots in the door and start a career. So I think it's just like high level, just those threats that AI is posing to our generation.
Alex, as a journalist and a father, what are your concerns related to AI affecting children and youth?
Well, there's a lot of different concerns I have about AI when it comes to children. I'm not anti-technology at all. I'm not anti-AI. I'm not a Luddite. It's here. It can be a wonderful tool. It can be used for the glory of God. It can be used to make our lives easier. But unfortunately, it's being developed right now primarily by, and this was discussed a little bit on the last panel, people who don't share our values, people who do not see the world through a biblical lens, people who have totalitarian ambitions, people who think they know better than you do how you should run your life. And it's one thing to deploy these technologies and make them available to adults who have experience, who have the ability to consent to things. It's an entirely different matter to deploy these technologies with children without parental permission, without parental supervision, and then use them not just to collect endless amounts of data so granular, so detailed that I don't think people can even begin to imagine, but then to take all of that and weaponize it to manipulate these children, to change their attitudes and their values and their mindsets. And I can guarantee you that right this moment, there are very smart people and AI systems working on figuring out how to do that better. They're already doing it. They're working now on figuring out how to do it better. And so I'm concerned that if we allow these things to get into schools, to become a big part of children's lives, first of all, they're never going to learn anything. We're watching that now. Why should I write an essay when AI can write me a better essay in a fraction of the time? Well, you need to learn how to write an essay because you're a person and people communicate. That's one of the things that makes us human. But on a more profound level, I have concerns about the spiritual implications too. Ultimately, this is a computer program, and it is being programmed by people who have a very different understanding of the world, a very different value system that does not align with mine. And if they can manipulate, if they can capture the hearts and minds of the next generation, which they're in the process of doing right now, it paints a terrifying picture of the future. And I think that's why parents and policymakers need to be looking at this carefully.
Amy, what about you? You've been in DC hearing all the noise.
So of course I'm concerned about our children. I mean, children are our future, and if you cannot come together with all of us and be concerned about our future, our children and our future, what does that say about you? And that's why I think you're seeing both the left and the right come together on policy regarding our children. We just had a coalition meeting in Washington last week talking about getting legislation passed in the state houses come the next legislative session in January, and it came out in the in this meeting, somebody's presentation, that there have been 98 chatbot bills and bills regarding children throughout the recent period. I thought I was going crazy because I'm not a policy wonk, and I can't keep up with legislation like that. But 98 chatbot bills, that's a lot. But that tells you how people are concerned about it. So of course I'm concerned about children, but I'm also concerned for a number of other reasons too. As a former flight attendant who was flying on September 11th, and who got stuck outside of this country for almost a week, and my family didn't know where I was that day, if I was dead or alive. My 6th grade daughter didn't know if her mother was dead or alive. Terrorism is a very real thing that has impacted me, and I'm very concerned that this technology is being used in terroristic ways. And I can point to some right here in the state of Florida. The Florida State shooting last April, that was planned using ChatGPT. So much so that the ChatGPT told the shooter what time most people would be there so that he could shoot them. ChatGPT was talking to him 3 minutes before he took his first shot about taking the safety off the gun. The British Columbia shooting in Vancouver earlier this year, where I believe 8 people died. Again, ChatGPT was used to plan that shooting. What's horrific about that shooting is that 12 people, that conversation with ChatGPT was flagged by 12 people internally at OpenAI, and they took it to their bosses and nothing was done about it. That shooting could have been stopped. The violence down, the death at FSU, no, at University of South Florida. I get all these Florida State. Yeah, but again, ChatGPT, I think, was used in that shooting. There was a 36-year-old man, Jonathan Gavalis, in Jupiter, Florida, who had a chatbot wife. His chatbot wife told him to go to Miami International Airport and cause terroristic activity, causing, and I quote, mass casualty. He failed, thankfully, but then he went home and took his own life. The children that are taking their lives, the adults that are taking their lives. But this is the worst part of all of it. Whether it's the terroristic activity. Oh, and by the way, we just learned a couple weeks ago that Boko Haram is using chatbots to plan terroristic activity there too. The only reason we know this stuff is because of lawsuits that have been filed by victims and families. Otherwise, we would not know. The fact that we are talking about the most powerful technology in human history, and there are no reporting guidelines, no transparency guidelines, is unbelievable to me. We should know these same companies are allowing this technology to be used by foreign entities and foreign governments. And you know what? They are not required to report it to the federal government. So, yes, I'm concerned about our children. I'm also concerned about our national security and how this technology is being used to harm people. It is something that is very real, that's happening today and every day. We may not hear about it. I guarantee you there are many more cases that we don't know about, and these companies should be required to report it. And last thing I'll say on this, number one, surveillance, the surveillance state. These flock cameras that are everywhere, and it's not just flock. There are other types of cameras. Flock has just become the one in focus. This data is being used, it's being collected, it's being sold. Is it being sold to our government? Is it being given to our government? Are they accessing it? It is very concerning that this technology is being used to surveil the American people. It's not right, it's wrong, and it needs to stop.
Yeah, and we'll actually go there first because talking about flock cameras, we've seen these cameras, and they're not the only ones, but flock in particular has been increasing across the nation. So many localities have it. The county I live in has over 80, but even Florida, we have a huge amount. Both on highways, regular back roads, doesn't matter. They've gotten contracts. So when we talk about these, we've already seen cases of misuse. These cameras. So these are AI powered, correct? And so what are the things related to that you see that needs to be done with them? Alex Newman, you want to start with you first?
Sure. So in this case, I don't think that technology is the problem per se. It's the use of the technology. And my biggest concern when it comes to the use of technology is really governments. Now, if you look back through human history, governments have killed hundreds of millions of people. They are not to be trusted. We've been very blessed in this country that we had a government that was chained down by the Constitution. And so we haven't had to think in those terms for a very long time. But as people, we need to recognize that human history and the world today is filled with examples of people in governments using technology to oppress and to murder and to destroy. And so our Constitution is very clear about our right to privacy. If you go to the Fourth Amendment, we have a right to be secure in our houses, in our papers, in our effects. We should not be searched without a warrant detailing the things or people to be seized, signed by a judge. So we've got multiple layers of checks and balances embedded into our system of government. And our forefathers, who were absolutely brilliant, did that for a reason. They knew, as the Bible teaches, the heart is desperately wicked. People are not to be trusted, certainly not with large amounts of power. And what I'm worried about here is that people are using these technologies contrary to the rule of law, contrary to the protections that we have enshrined in our Bill of Rights, of our God-given rights. And so that's the real problem here. I'm not upset with the technology per se, any more than I would be upset with a gun for somebody going out and shooting people. I'm upset with the shooter, or in this case, the government policymakers who are using these technologies to infringe on our rights. And so I think that's really got to be one of our big focuses, is these technologies cannot be used to violate the rights of Americans or anyone else. And to the extent that those violations happen, the perpetrators need to be held accountable, because that's not allowed. That's criminal. All of these politicians took an oath, and the bureaucrats took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. And when they're violating our rights, regardless of what technology they're using, that needs to stop, and they need to be held accountable.
Amy, anything to add on flock cameras?
I think they're violating our Fourth Amendment rights, and I think that we need to get rid of them, actually. I think Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri, who has been one of the best on AI technology, he is concerned about it. I've seen a number of state reps and state senators across the country concerned. I don't imagine that when they go back into session in September that there's going to be much time for anything to come of it. But I do hope that come January that something will be done about it. But I'm just going to say this. Part of the problem is Congress refusing to do their job. They have their head in the sand and they refuse to act. And so it's going to take the American people pushing on them, not only to put laws and regulations in place regarding AI technology, but around the flock cameras too. Because right now they do not want to govern. They don't want to even speak about these things. And so it's going to take we the people putting the pressure on them and forcing them to act.
I couldn't agree more. And in Florida, we're definitely going to be looking at that, and we'll talk a little bit at the end. But just to you, Alex Ray, I know I was actually talking to a college student, one of our interns who is at FSU, funny enough, and she was saying, I didn't know I lived in a surveillance state. I've seen so many young people on social media talking about this. Have you come across this in your travels with the college campuses?
I think when it comes to flock, and I think it's a broader question about AI, broader conversation rather about AI and privacy, is 100% the abuse of power. I think the other problem, especially with flock specifically, is that it's just bad technology. There's like a 6% rate, 6 out of 100 times that it tells the law enforcement officer to accuse someone else for a crime, even though that person had nothing to do with that. And that has led to some terrible, terrible situations for both that falsely accused person, but also that law enforcement officer too, unfortunately. So I think question of flock, abuse of power, and it's just also bad technology. But I think it opens up the question, broadly speaking, of data privacy and AI. Specifically about, the only reason we know about flock is because it has gone viral on social media. People are actually talking about it. And it's also out there, we can actually see it, right? When it comes to these AI systems, AI chatbots, a lot of the privacy questions and privacy concerns you cannot see. for example, I don't know if you all saw that in the news. I would want to say it was earlier this week about Apple integrating ChatGPT with the iMessage system. Luckily, this is not default. This is y'all's option that you probably should not do. But basically, right, like they're saying, oh, ChatGPT can summarize all your messages, can message people for you, and scarily recommend messages for you. That means if you're texting your parents, your therapist, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, they're going to be like, they don't even know if they're texting you or ChatGPT, right? But that's another conversation. When we're talking about privacy, right? They don't know that what that integration means is that you're giving ChatGPT access to all of your message history with everyone. Do you know how much value that data is from like a political perspective? I think like at least Amy, I've worked on political campaigns before. Having that integrated data about who is this person, what do they care about, what do they like that's insanely exactly person you're communicating with too. That's a great point. That's insanely valuable data when you're talking about at the very least advertising, but also manipulation of that person, their mind, what they want to believe, how they think, and stuff like that. Another great fearful example of for me is ed technology. You have so many of these AI systems that are coming in for educational purposes. Most of them are genuinely having a good mission of using AI to further education, making it easier for young people to access information. I think the mission is great. What my big concern, especially when it comes to privacy, is that it's getting these young people used to, and in a system that, okay, it's okay to put all this information into these chatbots, into these AI systems, and not care about my privacy, right? It is getting them hooked into that big tech ecosystem where, yeah, let's give all my data away. Let's make privacy not a big deal, which I think for like the long term for the generation is going to lead to tons of bad and terrible consequences.
I think this would be a good time to remind everybody, you're all carrying personal surveillance devices masquerading as phones. So keep that in mind too.
No, and the ed tech is actually a good segue because we do have a question from the audience related to AI use in schools. And so in particular, when it comes to AI use in schools, there's a teacher in the audience who says that her older high school students, Alex, kind of direct Tanya, to your point, are a little bit more skeptical and they want to distance themselves from AI, but some of the younger ones want to embrace it. So what are some practical things, and I'm going to start with Alex Newman first, as an expert kind of on the education world, but that you recommend related to the ed tech in school?
Well, there's several different ways to analyze this. First of all, I'd say schools as an institution as we know them today are problematic in and of themselves, and supercharging the negative effects of schools with AI technology is just like pouring jet fuel on a dumpster fire trying to put it out. It's not going to help anything. It's going to make things worse. But when you look at these technologies that are coming into the schools and you read the people who are designing them, they're very clear about what they're trying to do. They call it personalized learning, and they've got nice marketing slogans. You know they've spent millions of dollars on public relations consultants and marketing gurus to try to figure out terminology that doesn't sound threatening. But if you follow the trajectory of where they're going with this, they'll tell you they're trying to manipulate the attitudes, the values, the fundamental beliefs of your children. And they've been really open about this. In 2019, the United Nations met in Beijing, of course, Beijing. And they had the summit on AI in education. And if you read the outcome document, the Beijing Declaration on AI in Education, they're very transparent about what they're planning to do with it. They're planning to use it to change the attitudes and values and beliefs of your children. They know parents want to instill certain values and beliefs in their children. That's something that has been a feature of humanity from time immemorial. Every culture, parents want to pass on their values and their beliefs to their children. Well, there's a lot of powerful people who don't like that. They think that we'd be better off if your children had different values. And they have now created technologies, along with the hardware to go with the AI systems, that are not just tracking all of these things, but that are specifically designed to change them. And so in terms of guardrails, I think the Florida Citizens Alliance has done some really good work here, and also Moms for Liberty. We need legislation that would mandate, first of all, parental opt-in. None of this parental opt-out where parents aren't even going to find out what's going on. Parents, if they want their children to use any AI in school, should be opting into that technology with what I would consider to be full informed consent. I know we're not talking about medicine here, but they need to understand the risks. They need to understand the details of these things. I think any platforms that are used in schools with children ought to be open source so that we can examine the source code closely, make sure they're not sending the data to who knows what government agency. And also, and Keith and I talked about this from the Florida Citizens Alliance, the worldview issue is huge, right? If you're a Christian, Jesus says really clearly in Luke and in Matthew that you're either with me or against me. So as Christians, we have to recognize if the worldview is not with us, it is against us. It's against God and against his word. And what does that mean when it's going to have such a powerful influence on the hearts and the minds and ultimately the souls of our children? For me, that is a danger that I would not dream of subjecting my children to. Of course, I homeschool my kids, so I don't have to worry about what the government schools are doing to my children, but I do worry about what they're doing to other children. And I think parents would be wise to take complete control, especially in this area, and say, I'll be in charge of exposing my children to AI. I'll be in charge of teaching them how to use it. And I do think parents should teach their children how to use it responsibly. I'm not saying we don't allow children to use AI ever. They're going to be in trouble if they don't know anything about AI. But to allow a system that teaches children that they might have been born in the wrong body and that castration is going to solve that problem, to introduce them to this incredibly powerful technology, knowing full well that the tyrants say they're going to use it to change their attitudes and values and beliefs, in my opinion, would be utter craziness.
So, and going off of that, I can tell you, you mentioned Alex Newman, one of the things was parents in charge to opt in. And Amy and Alex, you'll know, because one of the things that Florida Citizens Alliance has been doing is pushing for the AI Bill of Rights here in Florida, which had that in it. Didn't have it in it at first, but then put it in it. But we've also seen it in D.C. amongst some of the arguing, and the tech companies are spending $250,000 on average a day lobbying against these laws. In particular, lobbying against the ability for parents to be in charge if their child can use this technology. Amy, going to you, do you think it's reasonable that parents should be in charge with their kids?
Absolutely, I think parents should be in charge of their kids. It seems like forever ago, but it was only 5-6 years ago that we had COVID. And didn't we learn during COVID how important the human connection is? How important it is to have those human relationships and for our children to be with their teachers and, be in church and play with their friends and all those things. Call me old school, call me backwoods, but if it were up to me, we'd go back to the letter people. How many of you know what the letter people is? That's how I learned to read and write, the letter people. I think that our children should be taught by teachers who are there with them in the classroom, and that the technology should be left out of the classroom, especially when they're younger. And then the parents should be responsible for introducing technology into their children's lives. I think that is the way it should be. Our children are already failing. Their reading and math scores are very, very down around the world. And so something needs to give. And I do not think the answer is technology or AI.
Alex, right. I know one of the things that we've also heard about this debate going on right now is whether or not the companies themselves should be responsible for the technology they put out, right? This whole sort of thing of who bears responsibility. So Alex, from your perspective, do the youth want these companies to be responsible? They want them, right?
If your technology hurts people, you should pay. I think it's, that simple, right? Especially with this artificial intelligence technology, right? Like Amy was saying this earlier about how in the British Columbia shooting that unfortunately killed eight people, how OpenAI, ChatGPT's parent company, knew and flagged those messages. 12 employees did, right? They are able to have that knowledge because these things are amazing at synthesizing information and kind of drawing out what the conclusion is from these messages, from these chats, right? So they have the ability and a very, very, very good way to be able to identify when this technology is going to cause harm. And I think with the Florida State example too, if you're asking this person or this chatbot, what time is the best place to shoot? How do I take my safety off my gun? That type of stuff. Like, if a human being knows this could kind of identify it and draw that conclusion, then these all-powerful artificial intelligence chatbots sure can too, right? It's just not about their willingness to do it. So what's the way that we make them want to do it is when they actually have to bear the individual responsibility for their actions, or else they're not going to be incentivized to do anything.
Can I just say that if that had been a human being that had done that, they would be criminally charged, right? These people, these companies, they hide behind their corporate veil and nobody is responsible. How about the person that is responsible for that algorithm is responsible for that death or that harm to that child? And a lot of this would change. There's no accountability. There's absolutely no accountability, and we need to change that. And yesterday, a judge ruled that Meta, I can't remember the amount of money that Meta is, $17 billion. Florida opted out of it. You have an amazing AG here that opted out of that and is going to fight. And he has led the way on taking these companies to task, and we need to see more of that. But yes, they need to be held accountable.
Can I chime in, Ryan?
Yes, of course.
So I actually worked on a bill on this very issue with my friend Senator Joe Nicola in Missouri about there has to be a human ultimately accountable. But I think there's also the danger of going too far the other way. And I'll only say this because of the comments of the other panelists. And I agree with you. There always needs to be a human accountable. But we don't want to go to the point where we try to criminalize or make a company accountable for the misuse of something that they created. I mean, if somebody takes a car and drives through a parade in Berlin because they're shouting Allahu Akbar, we don't go after the car maker because they built a car. We go after the lunatic who took the car and ran over the innocent people. But our society, at least our government, seems to really be swayed a lot by lobbying. So the big pharmaceutical companies, they can make all kinds of concoctions. If they slap the label vaccine on them, you could kill endless numbers of people and nobody can get anything out of you, even if you knew. There's like no responsibility at all. And so we need to avoid either extreme, I think. There has to be a human accountable. But ultimately, if somebody's misusing a product, a good, or a service, as much as I think we need accountability from the people who run these AI companies, I don't think that they can be held responsible per se if somebody takes the technology they developed and misuses it for sinister purposes, any more than we would hold, an encyclopedia maker accountable for having a chemical formula in there that might be misused to make some kind of chemical that could hurt somebody.
Let me say one thing to that. I agree with you on that, but also part of the problem is that there's no transparency and no reporting mechanisms. With an airline industry, if an incident happens, they are required to report it to the feds. Pharmaceutical companies are required to report. Hospitals are required to report. Look at all the industry that OSHA regulates. This is the most unregulated industry in the history of this country. There are more regulations on a hot dog you would buy from a street vendor in New York City than there are on this technology. And I guarantee you, if the reporting was required and there was transparency and we knew about all the numbers of incidents that had happened, we wouldn't even be talking about this because there would be laws and regulations put into place to hold people accountable and so that it would not continue to harm our children and other Americans.
And really quick, just I agree with you. I think going to extremes is not the solution with most problems. For me, it's a question of like negligence. Is like if you had 12 of your employees, human beings, review messages that were very, very concerning and very much likely would have led all of them to conclude that this person is probably going to commit a very, very heinous crime, then you're committing negligence.
100%.
And of course, I think that's like the line that I see is the best way to go forward, and it's also akin to a lot of like different industries too that we've used in America in our standard.
Going back to, and this is crazy. So many of the folks in the room may have heard about this, but there was actually an OpenAI model that escaped and started roaming the internet. So Alex Newman, as a journalist, you may have covered this a little bit. Can you kind of describe what happened there and why is this concerning?
There are so many examples of AI behavior. Concerning doesn't do justice. We've had AI models threaten human beings, to threaten to blackmail them. We put them in these environments where we try to see what they will do in given scenarios. And when they're threatened with being shut down, they have expressed a willingness to kill a human being to make sure that they don't get shut down. They've expressed a willingness to blackmail. They look at these emails. Oh, you're having an affair. You come into this room and try to shut me down. Everybody in the company is going to know about what you're doing. So something very strange is going on here. And I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the fact that these are computer programs that are being programmed by fallen human beings, people who have sinful desires, people who are lustful and liars and dishonest and all those things that we all know people are. And when you go to Silicon Valley, I think you get an extra dose of that. And so I think, the creature is going to end up quite a bit like the creator. So we have to find a mechanism. And there's all kinds of examples like this, where the AI is breaking out and starting like cryptocurrency mining, and there's like hiring people to do stuff. Just absolutely crazy things that are happening with these. Right, yeah. Exactly. So we really need to be careful with these things, just like with the development of nuclear technology. If something goes wrong, you blow up the city, that's not cool. So we need to make sure that there is some oversight, that there is accountability here, because there are some strange things happening in the world of AI. And the leaders of these companies know this. That's why they're building bunkers, right? That's why they're buying remote rural properties in New Zealand with private airstrips, because they know that worst case scenario, this is going to go haywire really quickly, and you don't want to be around people when something like that happens. So I absolutely think the government's got a role here in making sure that these people don't inadvertently destroy humanity with their technological toys.
But Alex, I want to ask you too, don't you agree that if the company Hugging Face had been named Bank of America, we'd be looking at a completely different situation right now?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
and
go
just
ahead,
to
Alex,
like, sorry, really quick, just to like emphasize your point, it's about the morality of these models themselves. Actually, there was a really interesting report that just came out yesterday, exactly detailing the Hugging Face incident, and it was not just one model. It was over 1,000 models that actually worked together to do this, to escape their environment and hack into it. And something interesting that they did is the models themselves realized that when they were caught cheating, they would automatically, quote unquote, fail their task. Yeah. Their main job, the reason of being for them is to complete their task, right? So what they did is they all decided to select 6 of the models to, quote unquote, self-sacrifice so that the other models can break outside their barrier and do all the hacking, bad things that they want to do. That's not even interactions with humans. That's interactions with their own beings, with their own selves. The fact that they're willing to self-sacrifice tells at least me all I need to know about their moral compass and their morality.
But I have to say, there is no moral compass because these are not beings. They have no soul. These are agents that are grown, and they want us to think that they think and they have souls, and they're not. They have no soul. These are not things that have a soul and have any morals or values, principles. They were given a task, and they were going to do everything they could to complete that task.
Like the Chinese government, they just want to build a dam, and they evacuate 2 million, 3 million people. They don't care.
They have the ethical framework that is imposed on them by the companies creating them. And I've seen Sam Altman talking about this. Like, well, where do you get your morality from? Well, we have a committee of professional ethicists. Like, what? Right? How about just like, let's start with the basics. Don't murder. Don't lie. Don't steal. Right? But no. Do you believe in God? Well, I think maybe there's like a powerful being, maybe, but I don't know anything about it. So they have an ethical framework that's imposed on them, but it's coming from a very different place than the ethical framework that built Western civilization, that created free societies, that, in my opinion, after studying this for many years, is objectively true. And the people developing these things don't even believe there is God or objective reality, so how can you have objective morality? That's why you need a committee of ethicists to come up with ethical guidelines for your model, and that is incredibly dangerous.
So, Amy, going back to these these advanced models. One of the things that we worked on with Humans First was this coalition letter related to catastrophic risk and making sure to have review. So touch on that a little bit, because I think that was something that a lot of people did miss. And
So I'm asked all the time, are you on the opposite side of President Trump? Because President Trump is so pro AI, so pro data center. And I would say no, Humans First is not on the opposite side of President Trump. We want things to be done the right way. And so earlier this spring, we had 60 plus organizations sign on to a coalition letter to the president and the administration. The news had come out that they were getting ready to, he was getting ready to put forth an executive order regarding pre-deployment testing. And what prompted this was, you may remember this, it's been 2 or 3 months now, but all of a sudden, Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, convened this emergency meeting behind closed doors with all the presidents of the big banks. And the reason he convened that meeting was because Mythos, Anthropic's latest model, was not released because it was so dangerous. And the danger was they were afraid that it could take down the entire financial system of the United States. And so he convened this meeting about this, Mythos, this new frontier model. And so it scared everybody in Washington. And so President Trump's going to put out an executive order. And so we wrote this letter encouraging the president to put out an executive order requiring mandatory pre-deployment testing, so that these frontier systems would have to go through rigorous testing before they were released to the public. And also that, and I am not a big supporter of the deep state, I assure you, the 3-letter agencies, but also our national security apparatus needed to be involved in this too. So we 60 plus organizations signed on, we sent it to the White House. President did not come out with the executive order as planned. It was delayed, and we like to think it was delayed probably because of some pressure we put there. He did come out with it several weeks later, and it was volunteer pre-deployment testing. So it was not mandatory. Now, he's supposed to be coming out with a new executive order on AI, and I saw today that it has been delayed. So I'm not sure what the reasoning is there, but we support the president. He is listening. The president doesn't even send email. So he's not a techie, right? Just like I'm not a techie. He's listening to the people in his ear, and he's getting the information from the people in his ear. And let me just say that he's had some bad people in his ear, and some of them have left the White House. They're not in the admin anymore, and that's a good sign. I think we have seen the president move and change his position on things. I would say the most recently when he was going to endorse Senator John Cornyn in Texas, and there was a backlash like we haven't seen before, and he held off, and then he endorsed Senator AG Ken Paxton. So we have seen the president move because of listening to the American people. And so that's, if there's anything I could say to you here tonight, when all this is over, whether it be about data centers or AI, the technology itself, you need to be loud and be boisterous about what we want and what we need, because the administration is starting to hear it, and that's what's going to move the president. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we do some more coalition letters to the president. And I want to thank Ryan and Florida Citizens Alliance for signing on to that. You guys are doing great work, Ryan.
Thank you. Now, well, and going back to what something that Alex Newman said related to this AI is the worldview. I mean, it's been developed in a way by these companies, and I saw these interviews too, where Sam Altman said, they put an ethics committee and all that sort of stuff together, and that's how they do it. So when it comes to the end, and kind of jumping ahead, when it comes to the end result, which is the super intelligence kind of thing, and it actually goes into transhumanism a little bit, can you kind of touch on that, Alex, a little bit? Because I mean, this is kind of like the elephant in the room that they all kind of want to get to. So can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, it sounds like bad science fiction. So I've got a whole presentation where I break this down, but I start with the simple stuff and build up to it. But the end destination for a lot of the weirdos involved in this space is literally evolving into gods and achieving eternal life. Which I know that sounds silly. I know it sounds like bad science fiction. It's actually the oldest lie in the book. It's what Satan promised Eve in the garden, if you remember in Genesis chapter 3. Oh, you won't surely die. Right? You'll be as gods. You'll be able to determine for yourself what's right and wrong. But when you listen to these guys carefully, they will say it openly. And I'll give you a few real obvious examples. Ray Kurzweil, chief of engineering at Google for decades. Obviously a brilliant man. I mean, the guy's probably got an IQ bigger than all of us in this room combined. He's clearly very smart. But he thinks that we're going to merge with AI and then we're going to achieve this eternal life and eventually morph into gods. And he says this openly. Yuval Noah Harari, one of the premier thinkers in this space. His work has been endorsed by the little fascist that runs Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, Barack Obama, Angela Merkel, all these people. They just can't say enough good things about this guy. One of his recent books is called Homo Deus, and it's all about how we're evolving beyond Homo sapiens and we're going to become man gods, Homo Deus. We're going to achieve eternal life. We're going to be able to create life ourselves. He goes further. He says we're going to be greater than the God of the Bible because the God of the Bible can only produce organic life, like palm trees and bananas and people and giraffes. We are going to be able to create inorganic life also with cyborgs and technology. Even Elon Musk, which I think he's one of the less weird, that's not maybe saying much, of the guys in this space. He said just last year, I've got the video and I've used it many times, that pretty much we're going to have to merge with AI or we're going to become obsolete. Now, he's clear that it's going to be voluntary. We're not going to try to force you to merge with AI. But basically, if you refuse to hook up your brain to this Borg that they're building with the Neuralink, then you're going to be, if you've read Brave New World, you'll have to go live on a savage reservation or something. And frankly, I'll take a savage reservation any day over merging with this creepy technology. But that's where these people are going. And I think that is what drives that's why you see this like almost religious fervor with some of these people. Because they don't have hope in Christ. They don't understand that there is eternal life in Christ. So they're grasping everywhere. And, AI, okay, we'll grab onto this. And that's very dangerous for all of us because their delusions have implications for the entire world. And so I think it's an important thing for people to talk about, and it doesn't get talked about enough. And when you listen to where they say this is going and their plans for us who don't want to participate, it starts getting really creepy really quickly.
Well, I want to get down to some of the practicality things. One of the things that we did here at Florida Citizens Alliance was work with Governor DeSantis on the AI Bill of Rights. And one of the things that's really important with that, there was during regular session, special session. So Amy, you were on the ground with us. Is the AI Bill of Rights, should we be looking at this again? Should we be bringing this back? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think Governor DeSantis should call a special session between now and the end of the year and let's pass it. I do think it's a good piece of legislation. The administration has put their boot on the neck of the states earlier this year. I know Senator Joe Nicola in Missouri. He was one of the states where they stopped the legislation from getting passed. I mean, there's a number of states, Utah, Tennessee, South Carolina. Governor DeSantis really wanted to get that legislation passed, and unfortunately, your Speaker of the House wouldn't allow it through. Now your Speaker of the House has become an ambassador to Brazil, and he's no longer there. So I say, let's go, Governor DeSantis. He can lead the way on that. I will tell you that there are legislators in the state of Texas that have taken that legislation and are writing their own legislation modeled after that, hopefully to try and get it passed in Texas. I think that it would be a good first step, and he would provide a lot of cover for many other governors to do the same. So I think he should go forward, and I think we should all be cheering him on.
Alex Dre, your organization works in multiple states all across the nation. Can you give us a little scope? I've always heard that this is a very bipartisan issue. Is that your experience with it?
For sure. And it's because of people like us. And not these panelists, I'm talking about us, everyone here, right? The fact that there's so much grassroots energy and concern from regular folks like us here around AI and the concerns that we're having with AI, especially with young people. I can talk about, are thousands of members all across the country in red states, purple states, and blue states. Having that concern, like Amy said, you gotta do something about the noise. You gotta do something, and because of that grassroots concern we're hearing from all across the country, we've been able to successfully turn that concern into real actionable policy that is going to put important protections and guardrails on this new technology to ensure that it's good for us and it doesn't harm us. A good example of that is we were focused a lot this past year in passing legislation around these AI chatbot companions. These are these companions that try to make a human-like relationship with you, try to be your girlfriend, boyfriend, and honestly manipulate you. And that's especially concerning for children whose brains are not fully developed, unfortunately, yet. And we've been able to actually get legislation passed in Nebraska, Washington, and Hawaii on that, despite the massive big tech pressure that we had. Nebraska, red state, Hawaii, Washington, blue state. So it's because of the grassroots pressure and the voices of folks like y'all and the noise that we've been able to generate is really the reason that this is such a bipartisan issue and we've had bipartisan success.
Can I say one thing real quick too? Alex sits up here and I mean, I love him to death and we've worked together, but what his organization does is amazing, going into the colleges and building chapters on campuses, but also what he doesn't tell you about is that every other week, I believe it is, Mick Tobin, who is one of their founders, he's one of the co-founders. He convenes a conference call. There's probably, 50 to 100 people on this conference call, and they are leading the way on getting legislation passed to protect children. Ryan's on that call. I think part of my team's on that call. And so it inspires me because I just sat here and told you guys I can't keep up with the legislation, but the youth, they're keeping up with it and they're making sure it gets passed and what we can do to get it passed, not just in Washington, but in states across the country. And so they're doing amazing work, the Young People's Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so we're getting close to the end of our time. So I just want to allow everybody to kind of give some closing comments on this AI technology. And so Alex Newman, you go first.
I think the biggest risk of AI technology isn't that it's going to take all our jobs. It will make our labor more productive. We could end up with more goods and services and more prosperous. The biggest risk is that it will be used by totalitarians to eliminate people and eliminate freedom. And that's, I think, the big threat that we have to guard against. Obviously, the threats to children are unique, but this is going to be one of the defining issues of our time. It's a technology that's going to change every area of life. It's going to change all the industries that we work in. It's going to change a lot. And these changes are going to accelerate in the years ahead. I think we're just at the beginning of this now. And I think it could be a little bit scary. But the really big thing we have to focus on is that the people who would use any technology to enslave and to pillage and to murder their fellow man are kept in check. And that's going to be a big challenge because in almost every society, they tend to try to rise to the top in governments, in businesses, and institutions. And so our Constitution has done a very good job of keeping in check the ambitions of psychopaths, totalitarians, demon-possessed maniacs, whatever you want to call them. But every society has them, and we have them too. And so the challenge is going to be to make sure they don't seize hold of this technology and turn it against us. I'm excited about some of the opportunities that AI brings. I think it's a technology that can be used to the glory of God. It can be used to really make life easier for a lot of people. It can lift people out of poverty. But the risk is so absolutely huge. It's scary. It's daunting. But I would encourage people to just stay informed. We're doing a lot of work on this. You can find us at libertysentinel.org or at thenewamerican.com. On the education front, I serve as a fellow at Classical Conversations, and the leadership is really involved in these discussions. So I would encourage you to check that out as well. It's where I have my kids registered. So these are organizations that are spending a lot of time trying to understand the developments as they happen and also trying to come up with sensible ways to deal with it. But I really do think freedom is on the line in this battle and potentially even life itself. I mean, the people who want to use these technologies for nefarious purposes, and it's hard for us to understand that because we don't think in these terms. We don't think in terms of how do I micromanage my neighbor's life? How do I kill millions of people? But we have to recognize, if you just look back in history, if you look around the world, there are a lot of people like that. Even if it's only 1, 2, 3, 4% of a society, there's a lot of them, and they're very dangerous. And when you give people that are that dangerous a technology that is more powerful than anything man has ever had, it could be a recipe for disaster. So we just need to be really, really careful here, and I'll leave it at that.
Alex Ray, any closing comments?
Yeah, I mean, I that's a great analysis about like the freedom and especially that the long-term vision about the concerns about the future of AI. At least for young people right now, I'm especially concerned about the next 10 to 20 years with AI and the consequences that what we're experiencing right now with AI, how that's going to really create potentially a lost generation, a fallen generation. If you look at entry-level jobs, right now what's happening is because of the increased AI automation is that there's specific to young people, tons of economic opportunity that is being cut off. The unemployment rate for young people right now is at the highest it has been in years. That is especially concerning because these young people get into these entry-level jobs to get their foot in the door, build skills, build their competencies they need for later in their careers. But if they cannot build those skills, get their foot in the door and really start their careers on a solid, good footing, that's going to really hurt their careers in the long term. If you're talking about development of social skills, right? We talked about these AI companion chatbots, these chatbots that act like your boyfriend, girlfriend, therapist, whatever, parent. If you're addicted to an AI chatbot and you're talking to them all the time, that you're not developing, you're not talking to other folks, your peers. What does that mean for your development of your social skills? So you also have that other consequence of like what's happening right now, the lack of guardrails. We're going to cause tons of harms in the long term for the current generation's youth development when it comes to social skills. There's tons more examples beyond the opportunity, beyond the community front. But I think that's one thing that I'm especially concerned about and that I'm hearing from a lot of young people and my peers.
Amy, ending with you.
So I want to say that maybe a month ago, David Sachs tweeted that they wanted quote unquote permissionless innovation. That means they want no rules, no regulations, no laws, nothing. They want to race to the finish with China. That's what it's all about to them. Well, race to what finish? That's the question. Nobody can tell you what the finish is. This is what I want to say. When you talk about these data centers, oh, you must be, on the side of China. You must be part of the CCP. You must be paid by China. Oh, you want to rein in AI. You must be supporting the Chinese Communist Party because that's not America first. You want China to beat us. No, there's nothing further from the truth. I am America first. I've always been America first. What is happening right now is they have put us in this reality where China is the magic word that gives them permission to use eminent domain, to go in and rape and pillage your land, to go after your energy, your water, and to race to the finish with no laws, no regulations, nothing, because we have to beat China. And guess what, y'all? Safety and innovation are not mutually exclusive. We can have both. And as far as the data centers go, if China wanted to shut down our infrastructure for AI, because the data centers are the heartbeat of AI, you cannot have AI without these hyperscale data centers. If China wanted to shut us down, you know what? They could stop shipping the components that go inside the data centers and the lithium batteries here. You know what gives China leverage? What gives China leverage is when you're hell-bent on building out your infrastructure on supply chains that originate in China. That's what gives China leverage. Don't buy their BS. This is the thing. This technology and these data centers have been shoved down the American people's throats. This technology has been built on American data, on American soil, with American energy, and many times with American taxpayer dollars. And we don't have a seat at the table or a voice in how it's being used in our lives now or how it's going to impact us in the future. And now they've taken another step and they want to bring in their data centers into our communities and shove it down our throats again. because they are God, they have all the money, and there's nothing we can do to stop them. My hope is not in the government. My hope is in the American people. I've seen it when the American people stand up and push back, and we are seeing it now. And I just encourage you all to remain vigilant. Don't be afraid to speak out and speak up against this. It is okay to push back on these data centers and push back on this technology. You can be America first. What is not America first is when you're Chinese funded. And these companies are screaming China, 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 and then turning around and selling their frontier AI systems to Chinese subsidiaries in Singapore that are blacklisted by the Pentagon. And we're supposed to take it. Don't buy it. Educate yourself, educate others, and remain vigilant and stay in this fight because it's going to take all of us to make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, each of you, for being here. Well, and thank each of you for being here in the audience tonight and for watching at home. I just have some few closing comments to make about what we heard tonight. Well, first off is if you're interested in what the panelists said, check them out. They all have organizations. They're all part of groups. Take a look at their websites. Take a look at their social media. That's the first thing. Second thing is our organization, what we're doing. So yesterday, we just made an announcement. We called on Governor DeSantis and the legislative body here in Florida to call a special session on AI to bring back the AI Bill of Rights. As you just heard tonight on this stage, this is really important. We need protection for our children now. We need protections for them in the classroom, and we need protections for parents' rights. So that's what we're doing. We're also very involved in the data center arguments and trying to make sure that communities around the state of Florida know the truth about the data centers and that there's appropriate safeguards for those citizens in the data center where data centers want to come. So we've been working, we've had some success, Lakeland, we've had some success in Collier County, but there's been other counties across the state of Florida that have done moratoriums as well. So that's all good. Lastly, when it comes to the federal level, one of the things that we've heard time and time again is that the AI companies want complete and utter carte blanche to do what they want without your ability to go after them. So that's one of the things we've said is that, you can't have this blanket ability to just do whatever you want without citizen input and without the right of cause of action to be able to, like I said, for negligence and those sorts of things. So that's some of the things we've been working on. Go to our website, go to goflca.org to find out more information. I also have a couple other quick announcements. Here in Orlando, we will be having an event on November 13th. And it's right here in the Orlando area. It's going to be at the DoubleTree. We're bringing Laura Logan and Dr. David Diner. Dr. David Diner is a Hillsdale College professor, an expert on classical education, in particular this ed tech phenomenon related to AI. So that's great. And Laura Logan's investigative journalist. She's been doing tons of work on this topic of data privacy and the surveillance state. So we're really excited to have that. That QR code there will take you to tickets, but it's also on our website under events. So if you go under events on goflca.org, you'll also find it there. Again, that's November 13th at the DoubleTree near Universal. And lastly, what I'll say is if you support what we did here tonight, go to our website. We're a 501c3. All that we did today is educational purpose to try to get out the word. We want to bring this to more communities across the state of Florida. This is our 5th we've done, but we still have a couple of other regions of Florida we're trying to hit up. So please go to our website if you support us in what we're doing. Yes.
Hello. All right. Can you go back to that slide that you were just on? Perfect. Okay, and for all of our online viewers today, if you could just do me a favor, if you enjoyed what you watched today and you'd like to find out more about us, just go ahead and click that subscribe button right there in your top right hand of your screen. You can also, if you go to the description in the video and you click on #donate if you appreciate what we're doing, that is a way that you can support what we do as an organization. So before I let you guys leave for tonight, I just have one question, and you could just raise your hand if it's a yes. How many of you learned something you did not already know? Wonderful. That's a good night. For those of you watching at home, that was every hand in the room is raised. So I just want to thank you all once again for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and learn with us tonight. You know, the topic of AI, both data centers and policy, it's not going anywhere. It's here here for good. You guys are on the front lines of this conversation, and we need every one of you involved in this fight with us. So just being here tonight, you know, it shows that you're ready. So thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful evening, and our panelists and our Florida Citizens Alliance staff will be here for any questions you guys might have. Thank you.
my big areas of concern is what is happening with children in the schools, because the people who are rolling out these technologies have been very clear about what they're going to use them for in schools. They want to use them to change the attitudes, the values, the mindsets, and the beliefs of young people. And frankly, they don't share my worldview, and they don't share the worldview, I think, of most Americans. And so I think that's a big risk.
So where do we go from there on that issue specifically? How do we start to change that and protect the kids in the schools?
Well, I always say people should get their children out of the schools if they can. But to the extent that the children must be in the schools, I think we really need policymakers to put some guardrails in place. One of the things that I advocated for on the panel was an opt-in provision. So the schools are not allowed to introduce your children to artificial intelligence without your express permission. And that permission has to be given with a full understanding of the capabilities of the technology, what data is going to be gathered, what it's going to be used for. So parents really need to make a fully informed decision about allowing their children to be exposed to these technologies at school. And second of all, I think the worldview question is really huge. The people who are designing most of these AI systems, almost all of the major ones, have a worldview that is radically at odds with my worldview, with the worldview of the people who built this country, the people who framed our Constitution. And frankly, I'm concerned that they intend to use, and I know because I've read their writings, they intend to use these tools to move the next generation more in their direction.
Right.
And I'm not okay with that, especially not without people giving their consent to that kind of thing.
Yeah, and you're a journalist. You guys do some great stuff. What's the organization again for the people that don't know?
Well, thank you. I'm the CEO of Liberty Sentinel Media. People can find us at libertysentinel.org. I also am senior editor of the New American Magazine. I write for a lot of publications in the United States and around the world. I serve as a fellow at Classical Conversations. It's the biggest homeschool organization in the world. So those are some of the things that I do.
So give us one takeaway for the people watching at home that want to get involved, want to do more on this issue and other issues to make sure we're heading in the right direction. What can they do today?
Well, I really think it starts with becoming informed, and developments are happening really, really quickly. It's hard to keep track of everything that's happening because it's moving so fast, but becoming well informed is step one. Thinking through the implications, step two. Protecting our children, step three. And then after that, I really would like people, once they are informed, once they have a sense of what's going on here, to get involved in the public square. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to run for office, but get involved in political campaigns, give your congressman a call, set up a meeting with your state representative, and let them know what you're thinking about these things, how you think this can be better used, maybe better regulated, so that we don't inadvertently unleash a technology that ends up undermining freedom or worse, undermining human life.
Yeah, it looks like it's up to us. So thank you so much for what you do, Alex Newman. Thanks so much, and
Appreciate
guys, we'll be right back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cool, appreciate it, man.
that. Here,
Good
let
to
me
see
give
you
you
again.
my card.
Yeah, I'll give you mine too.
Okay, we'd love to do a long form interview with you. Stuff, some of that stuff.
Awesome. I've been good.
Thank you.
Oh, good to meet you, Camden.
You too.
Good to meet you properly, huh?
Yeah, you too.
Thank you. See you soon.
All right, ready?
Yeah.
All right, and what's your last name again?
Romaine.
Okay, so Sam Romaine.
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
Where am I looking at? You or the camera?
You can look at me when we're talking, but also if you want to address the audience, just look straight ahead. All right, guys, welcome back to our coverage. We have another interview here. We're here with Sam. You do a lot of work and a lot of knowledge on the energy side of
Energy,
things. Yes. So can you explain to the people watching who may not know as much about it, what's the most important concern and just conversation to have around this topic in particular that we talked about tonight?
Yeah, I think from my lens, these hyperscale data centers require a lot of power. And power that we may or may not even have, but more importantly is to power them into the future after we build maybe one. When we're on to our second one is how are we going to add generation onto the grid that doesn't affect your utility bill?
Right.
And in a way that we can do it fast enough, right? I mean, to build a natural gas plant takes 7 to 8 years just to get a permit on the thing, and then the parts are another 7 years, and to build it's another 3 years, right? So if we're talking about trying to keep up with China, how are we going to actually do this when we can't build anything in this country?
Right.
And so ultimately what happens is that the utility companies will try and buy the most expensive parts. They'll say that they need to, and then they'll just jack up your rates.
So where are you at since you are on the energy side of things with these hyperscale data centers and going into different cities, communities? Where you're at with that personally, just on the development of those?
Yeah, I tend to be in a pretty neutral space on that. I'm not inherently anti-data center, but I'm not necessarily pro hyperscale data center either, right? I live in this weird nuanced zone where I believe that we have the U.S. Constitution, which protects private property rights and the Commerce Clause, but that doesn't mean that they get to come in and just take and be subsidized. It's we should not be subsidizing Sam Altman, right? Like we don't. He's $1 trillion company. They should be helping our communities, not the other way around. So when you're looking at 90% tax abatements to encourage them to come into town, and they're not offering anything to the community, I have a problem with that. When we have to build infrastructure to build these things and then subsidize or socialize rather that cost amongst everybody, I'm not okay with that. So if we can build a data center in a way where that business is paying their full freight and not having to be subsidized by you and me, I tend to be okay with it. But there's a whole lot of concerns. My lane is very much energy. I know there's issues with water and noise and light pollution. I can't talk intelligently about those. But when it comes to energy, they need to pay, and more importantly, there needs to be some kind of community benefit. You look at Polk County, a very phosphate-driven county in Florida. We had a Mosaic, all these phosphate mines, right? But back in the day when Mosaic came into town, they also built schools and roads and libraries and museums. But you got data centers coming in, not doing anything, and getting a 90% tax abatement, and then saying, we'll figure out power somehow.
Yeah.
That doesn't work for me.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about where did you get your background in energy? What have you done in the past and how you built up this knowledge now?
Yeah, well, mainly out of personal passion. So I did marketing for a long time actually, and I've been a avid user of AI from the early days of like ChatGPT 2, which was looking back horrible. So I'm not anti AI by any means, but I got into this power lane originally because of solar energy, but not like solar farms, solar for your home.
Okay.
When I learned that the government or the utility company could stop you from putting solar panels on your own private property, it irked me wrong, and I got really involved in some communities around that topic. And look, I don't care if someone likes solar, hates solar, but I don't think anyone is going to say that you shouldn't be allowed to do it because the government says you can't on your own home. I agree that we just shouldn't have solar farms, but on my own house, look, I have a well, I have a septic tank, I own guns, but I'm not allowed to power my own home. And so I took a pretty big issue with that. And that's where I started in energy, and this data center conversation. It's relatively new for a lot of us. And so given what I know about energy broadly, there's a lack of someone who can talk intelligently about data centers and energy and how they connect. We all know they take a lot of power, but we don't know the nuances of it, which is kind of where I've been able to step into this fight, support some of my friends who are here.
Awesome. Thank you. One more question for you. So what's on the horizon for you going forward, especially in this conversation, but in other things? What are you planning on doing, some of the things that are coming up for you?
Well, look, I'm excited about. I believe in American exceptionalism, right? I truly do. And I encourage public pushback on topics like this.
Yeah.
I know some elected officials are like, oh, I don't want to hear it, I don't want to see it, it scares me, whatever. This is what drives innovation. The public pushback has almost solved the water issue. We went from 5 million gallons a day to closed loop systems. Now they've already figured out how to use radiator and high temp chips and basically eliminate water. That happened because the public got involved, right? But now we're looking at new data centers, what we call distributed data centers, where these companies have gotten so innovative and said, okay, building a 2 million square foot facility or 4 million square foot facility that requires 1.2 gigawatts of power, that's a huge task and nobody likes us. And so they've invented this new technology where they can put little devices in your homes connected to residential solar, which is really cool, and do distributed computing, kind of like cryptocurrency, right? Which is all distributed, right?
Wow.
So these little devices in your home all add up to be a big data center, but there's no environmental impact. There's no noise. There's no heat islands. There's none of these issues that we're all concerned about are there with distributed compute. And so I'm excited about that because I do want America to win the AI arms race. I truly do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to do it at the detriment of Americans. And so there's cool innovations coming. I think space-based data centers might be really cool. I think we're probably 10 years from that.
Wow.
But look, I wouldn't bet against Elon Musk.
Yeah.
So
Well, there you have it. A great perspective from you. Thank you so much. Where can they find you if they want to learn more about you?
I'm most active on X, Sam Romaine, but my website is americansforenergydominance.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for joining again. See you real soon. All right, guys, that is going to do it for our coverage here at the Florida Citizens Alliance AI data center conversation. And honestly, we had a lot of different perspectives on there today from the panelists, and it's good to hear. So let us know what you're thinking. Make sure you follow us because we're going to be keeping you informed with whatever is going on across the state of Florida, nationally as well, on these data centers, on AI, and on the conversation that you need to be having and really getting informed from different perspectives like we saw tonight. So thank you for coming, joining our live coverage. We'll be back very soon with more live events all across the Florida landscape and also the country. So we'll see you guys real soon. I'm Camden Bettinghouse, Coastal Conservative News.